Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Bob. Yesterday I talked a little bit more about the ancient celebration of Epiphany, where the Christ child was made known to the wise men. And I talked about the difference between scriptural accounts and traditional accounts. In scripture, just in the Gospel of Matthew, we find the wise men's story, and we know that the wise men followed a star until it stopped over the place where the child and his mother Mary were located. They worshiped the child and brought him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And hence we get the tradition of 3 wise men, because there were 3 gifts mentioned. And later on, we ascribe the title of kingship to those wise men. So we have 3 kings. And even later, we take it, the backstory, we develop a little bit further. We give them names and even countries of origin. Well, today I want to talk to you a little bit more about the scriptural account that can connect Old Testament prophecies to the account of the wise men. You remember the prophet Daniel in the Old Testament. He was one of many of the best and brightest of the southern kingdom of Judah who were taken into captivity in Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar, you remember that kind of famous name. Well, his son was King Belshazzar. And you've heard the phrase, the writing on the wall. It's easy to read the writing on the wall. Well, there was a scriptural account of this mysterious writing of the wall and a banquet that the king was hosting. And nobody could read this mysterious writing. And so I want to read you the account of what happens in Daniel chapter 5. The king cried aloud to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the diviners. And the king said to the wise men of Babylon. So the wise men are these people who are the magicians, which really is more along the lines of chemists. The enchanters, the diviners, the ones who are studying all the ancient texts. These are the scholars, the most highly educated people in the world, in the land, and that's why they're called the wise men. The king said to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever can read this writing and tell me its interpretation shall be clothed in purple." This is the color of royalty. They shall have a chain of gold around his neck and rank 3rd in the kingdom. So, gold is what's given to somebody of high rank in the kingdom. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king the interpretation. Then King Belshazzar became greatly terrified, and his face turned pale, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, when she heard the discussion of the king and his lords, came into the banqueting hall. The queen said, "O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts terrify you or your face grow pale. There is a man in your kingdom who is endowed with the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, he was found to have enlightenment, understanding, and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and diviners, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel." So King Nebuchadnezzar made Daniel the chief of the wise men, the chief of the magi. Now, one of the things that Daniel and his friends would have brought to Babylon were the ancient texts, the ancient prophecies of the Holy Land. And so Daniel and his friends would bring forth the royal text, or the holy text that would have prophesied a baby being born in Bethlehem. And so included in everything that the wise men of Babylon, the wise men of the East were studying, would have been the text that would have prophesied the birth of Jesus the Christ. And so all the years later, wise men from the East would have kept studying these ancient texts. Now, why that might seem like something that's rather far-fetched, there is a Roman text that alludes to the position of these ancient prophecies being made known not only to wise men from the East, but in the day of Christ, even Roman leaders knew of these ancient texts and prophecies. Interestingly, the Roman historian wrote about them, and he, just to summarize it, said that obviously these ancient prophecies refer to Vespasian and Titus. Now, these were Roman leaders in authority in the Holy Land. Now, why would he think that? Because Vespasian and Titus were in charge. They were over the Hebrew people that lived in the land. The Jewish people who lived there were under Roman authority. And so this Roman historian said, obviously, these ancient prophecies refer to Vespasian and Titus. He said, but the common people, meaning the people of the land, the Jewish people, believe them to be referring to someone from Judea. So the Jewish people, in his mind, had the audacious belief that they thought it was someone from Judea that these ancient prophecies were referring to. And he scoffed at that idea. Why? Because Rome was in charge of them. And so even in the time of Christ, these ancient prophecies were well known. And wise men from the East, who were still the most learned men probably in the ancient world, studied the stars, the dreams, the ancient texts, and they followed the star over to the place where it stopped, and they found the child Jesus with his mother Mary, and they worshiped him. And then what does it say in the Gospel of Matthew? And then being warned in a dream not to return to King Herod, who would have wanted the location of Jesus, they returned to their homeland by a different route. Well, again, they were skilled in the art of dream interpretation because they had been studying the ancient texts, because they had been studying all the text from the prophet Daniel, who was skilled in the ways of dream interpretation. And so you have all these connections between modern day and ancient texts, because they continued to study and study all through the years. And so even though all these hundreds of years they had never seen the Messiah's birth, they were ready and they understood the signs when they finally did appear. How are you studying to recognize Christ? Are you reading Scripture? Are you praying? Devotional life is so important so that you can grow in your faith and understanding and your knowledge of who God is, so that you can better reflect God in the world and you can better see God in the world. How are you committing part of your life to grow in your faith? Hope you'll think about that today. Have a great one.